questions, if you have them. I've got a dedicated cell phone number, so you can text me questions, which we can answer possibly at the end, if you would wish. So good morning. What a treat and thrill, a privilege to speak to this august group about systems and systems literacy. This term, and I'm going to talk about these topics this morning, meetings that we had last year in Berlin, what we've been doing for a year since Berlin. I'm going to talk about a model of systems literacy in terms of the ocean and work that I have done for the last nearly, 15, 16 years now. And then talk about this week, and then look to the systems literacy future. The next thing I need to make sure is that I'm on time. So I'll do that. All right. So if you have any questions, please text them to that telephone number. And if you're tweeting, please put the hashtag systems literacy in the tweet. So last year I went to Berlin, to the ISSS meeting, and the topic, if you may recall, was governing the Anthropocene, the greatest challenge for systems thinking in practice. And while I was there, I took these guides to ocean literacy. I also took guides on earth science literacy and ones on energy and climate, reflecting work that had been done and is ongoing in the United States to make a difference in the education of the next generation, which we were just talking about, and also in an effort to influence the educational system. So, this is a model, and I'm going to talk about that. The other thing that we did was we did some video streaming, and we had lots of small group discussions about the needs of systems population, the systems community, to be working together. And in particular, ISSS, INCOSE, and IFSR. So in Berlin, looking here to the ISSS here at 60 years, a systems or search for a clarification of systems foundation. What do we mean when we say systems? And I think that's one of our real challenges. The group, INCOSE, which is the International Council on Systems Engineering, has a relationship with the International Society for Systems Sciences and a memorandum of agreement to really look for foundational ideas in systems. Janet and Michael Singer are the liaison, or Janet's the liaison, and there is an INCOSE Sciences Working Group. The National Science Foundation in the US is concerned about systems science, but it is in a particular niche, and they are creating efforts to establish more of a depth and discipline of system science. Also in Berlin, we were talking about the IFSR planning, which came up in planning the conversations in Linz. There are a number of new publications coming out on systems sciences, and we were talking about all of the global education changes that are needed, ideas and plans. So this was what was going on in Berlin, and we started talking about plans for this conference here in Boulder. And this is where I started explaining what we have been doing about the ocean. The ocean is a defining feature of our planet. Ocean literacy means an understanding of the ocean's influence on you or us and how we influence the ocean. I'm going to talk about a process that we developed over 2 years, 3 years, to come up with 7 key principles about the ocean and concepts that support it, and how we then built a network to continue this work. The process and principles, we started in 2002 and I think it offers a model for systems literacy. So that's why I'm going to go through this in a little bit of some depth. Education is ossified to some extent, right? It is stuck. And there are so many competing demands in a K through 12, through kindergarten through grade 12 school system, it is extremely difficult to make changes. And the ocean community in the United States, ocean scientists, ocean educators, and ocean policy people, in 2000, 2002, were getting extremely frustrated that the ocean was not taught in schools. It was not even in the curriculum. So here we have 70% of the surface planet, I don't know what, 95+% of biodiversity, and nobody literally was learning about it, which is a tragedy, really. So the challenge is how to change the system, how to get ocean taught in a system that is not really easily accepting of change. So we started building on a process that had been reasonably successful. I had started work with the National Geographic, because the National Geographic's concern is there's no or very little geographical awareness, another problem in school systems. And so we worked with them to develop some frameworks for geography education, K through 12, and then to look at oceans and how oceans can support geography. And the process was one that we then sort of had been developing over 2 or 3 years. The importance of getting key, I think, change. Gunter, you put up some faces of mentors and people. I think it's important to get the influencers to talk about the importance of this. This is a challenge I put to this community. Who would you think could be good spokesmen? I mean, we've got a great one here, obviously, and perhaps I can get this week an interview on why you think systems literacy is an important topic in education. But to have some key statements from leaders. Here for the ocean, we had Leon Panetta, we had the head of NOAA, Admiral Rickenbacker, a retired admiral, Gil Govner was the head of National Geographic, Sylvia Earle, and Bob Ballard. Those are known figures in the United States, at least, and we felt that having them interviewed and on record of saying the importance of it was a key piece of this model. So, you know, who do we go and talk to that's going to say, yes, every child should learn about systems? So the process, I'm going to talk a little bit about this model, is to cut through the interesting challenges of this really competitive communication environment and how to bring people together from multiple different views. Even though the ocean is a topic, a scientific topic, there are biological oceanographers, there are physical oceanographers, there are chemical oceanographers, and so on and so forth. And they live in their stovepipes to some extent, and they do not easily, or had not at that point, come together to agree on what was important, key topics in the ocean that they all needed to work together on and that needed to be included in the curriculum. So we brought together all the work that had been done and acknowledged it, and we used the web to save money, because we didn't have any, basically. And we used online surveys, mind maps, concept flows, small groups and large groups, to bring together 120 representatives of policymakers, ocean scientists, and ocean educators to discuss what are the key important principles and supporting concepts that every student should know. We did that through an online conference. And we had multiple webinars as well. And we mapped out the territory. So we used mind maps and other tools to draw together all the different ideas. And that resulted, essentially, in this guide. And the guide then served as a basis for further, further work to break down the principles and the concepts into 720 conceptual nodes, if you will, in a learning progression represented by this here. So the way that this process went through in a 18-month process was to look at organizational individual development processes, to use multimedia techniques, to look for technologies for communication, and that's, I think, an important point. And that's why I put the telephone number up there, and we're talking about getting you engaged through different kinds of media. We really worked on using existing organizations. So in the system sense, that would be building on the strengths of the organizations that exist in the systems world. What we did was we developed a shared language and a shared ownership. And I think those two things are crucial. And it's not an easy task to develop a shared language. And shared ownership has been crucial as well. The multiple organizations that got involved all have a stake now in promoting ocean literacy. Some values that we had in this process: openness, inclusion, flexibility, collaboration. I like to think we took a systems approach to the design. Sustainable over time. This is an ongoing process that we are continuing to this day. It's interesting that it was designed for the United States. It's applied for the United States, but it has, and I'll talk about this a bit more, has gone global. This whole program is now a global piece. Being scientifically accurate, and to make sure that it can be used practically by schools. So we talked about changing the system. You had a change the system slide. So it's about changing an educational system, not a small task. Not a small task in something like the United States, not a small task when we're talking globally. And I know there's a number of us here this week that we're going to be talking about global education changes, the way to think about that in nodal terms or in creative terms. And I like to think about top-down, bottom-up, sideways in, and of course networked. And for the ocean, we have ongoing work that continues to this day. And we now have the program has been picked up and taken to Europe and to the Pacific, into Japan and so on. So a number of people have recognized this work and the directness, if you will, of having some clear principles and fundamental concepts in a guide that can be used and described with 7 key principles and a number of concepts that can be supporting of it. So that's sort of a goal, if you will, that we want to do in the systems arena. The challenges, though, and something for you to think about this week, is the ocean is a physical feature. Earth science is a physical feature. Systems, however, are mental models. And so how do we explain and explore that? Words are not easily transferable. The term literacy, well acknowledged in English-speaking countries, is not easily translated into Spanish, for example, the concept. We talked a little bit about representation, and I think I'd like to talk about that now in what we've been doing for the last year. So that was the ocean literacy work that resulted in this guide and has had a significant influence on the US next generation science standards. The ocean is now strongly represented in these next generation science standards. So over the last year, this is what we've been up to. I just thought it would be useful if you knew what came out of Berlin, essentially. I came back excited about the idea, talked to the National Science Foundation, and they said, why don't you come in and talk to us? I did that. 30 program managers turned up and were very interested in the topic, said this could be revolutionary, was one term that a program manager said to me. So there is interest. The next thing was that there was a workshop put on by NSF for systems engineers to look at the future of systems education. And Alexander couldn't go to that, so he offered that I go, and I did, and I talked about ISSS and systems at that. In COSI, for those of you who don't know, the International Council on Systems Engineering is a worldwide body of 10,000 system engineers, those that have the MBAs, that do a lot of the designing of the systems that we're trying to influence and change, right? Okay, and that is an audience that is hungry for system science. And so I met with James Martin, who's head of the Systems Science Working Group. He happens to be very close to me, so he and I got into a regular dinner date over the past 12 months, which has led to 2 workshops within COSI, one in California in January, and then just literally last weekend in Scotland, where we had a whole day-long workshop on systems literacy at INCOSI. We've had a number of weekly meetings. Janet Singer and Dwayne Hybertson and myself have been talking about systems literacy from the systems engineering perspective and in broad terms, from broad system terms as well. So I guess in summary, there's a lot that's been going on there that has taken this year of effort. So here we are, essentially, this week, and things to think about as we talk about systems literacy. It shouldn't be just for the US, of course, but we're here in the United States. That's a big education system. It's an influential system, but it has to be, in my view, a very global and international effort. We've got to look at how we use language and how we think about different symbols to represent systems literacy ideas. So here are some considerations. And I just wanted to show you, let's hope this works, this video. Let's see. Is the sound plugged in? Hopefully it is.
Xijing, please, can you
Whoops.
help me
Okay, can't
work
hear
with
that.
systems literacy?
Can we turn that up? Let's turn that up. Let's turn that up. Is that up? Oh, thank you.
Will systems be in Chinese
That's
or
not good.
in China?
Okay, Peter, I'm not sure I'm full understand what literacy means, and so I explain the systems. First, I show the Chinese characters about the systems.
Okay.
So systems in English is this, and then in Chinese it's 2 Chinese characters.
Okay.
And in Chinese, it's this one and this one. So you can see if we replace X with S, the same pronunciation, and also the term and the tone is the same. So it's by the pronunciation is sometimes similar, but by the meaning, this characters means a series of numbers something, or series of categories, and also combine something together, and also the like the rank something. So this is maybe means the tree, and this word means put together or integration. So it is said that this Chinese character together generated for the translations of the systems. That's it.
That's it.
Uh-huh.
So that was a video that we how do I get the slides back now? Sorry, this is kind of interesting notes. So that was a video I took at the IFSR conversation, International Federation for Systems Research, and Mary Edson is the current president, sitting at the back. which is this overarching organization, if you will, that has, 40 plus systems organizations. And the focus of the conversations in April in Linz was systems literacy. And so there is this, I think, growing capability, perhaps, in thinking about systems literacy. So here we are for a week. And I would encourage you, as each day goes by, to think about what are the themes in that day that can contribute to the development of systems literacy. And on the SCED, or the SHED site, there is a link to a quick place to put some ideas. So if you would give us some feedback there, that would be great. What are the most relevant themes of the day? So on Friday, hopefully in the session, we'll be able to feed back those ideas to this group. There is, in the group here, in the attendees, there are 10 graduate students who've been taking the Systemic Inquiry course, and they will be working this week on 2 teams and projects. Obviously, we can have informal conversations. And then there is now a certain sense of urgency to get this done. In COSI, 10,000 members, 850 members at their last conference, are very keen to get this draft written. And as I say, we'll report back on Friday. And one example, I was talking with Alexander and colleagues yesterday, is the Global Education Future program. They have a workshop on Wednesday afternoon, and that's another place for us to continue to talk about it. So that's sort of the end of this orientation to what's been happening since we raised the idea of systems literacy in Berlin last year, what I've been doing, what a number of us have been doing to see how receptive the idea is, and obviously in the shaping of this conference a little bit, to see if we can get, at the end of the week, an action plan put together to move us forward. That is where we are, and I think now we've got about 10 minutes for some questions and some interaction, if that, on any topic, and I welcome us to work together on that, or however. And maybe if we can use a mic, too. If we can have a mic. Where are you? Can we turn these on as well? Just so that if people have got... Oh, is it just on the bottom? Yeah. Great. Okay. All right, John. So any questions on... So, here, can you... Okay, we've got a microphone runner.
Whoever just spoke.
Well, yeah, I thought, were you looking at the texted questions?
Thank you. Reminding me.
Yeah, so I texted one. I wanted to
You
know
did.
about...
I did get it. Thank you. Re-language. What is the difference? You're right. What is the difference in talking about systems literacy versus systems thinking? Very good question. I have a little bit of a challenge with the term systems thinking because it's about thinking. And while that's, of course, a very important point in life, thing to do, one of the themes of this conference is, as John said at the beginning, the whole. And I have a little bit of a problem with systems thinking as a bounded statement, in a sense. So, because there's system emoting, for example. There's system consciousness, you could say. And so systems literacy is about a way of understanding a system so that, in the terms of what happened in ocean literacy and earth science literacy, you can understand influences, you can make informed decisions, and you can communicate clearly. So if you can make informed decisions about systems, and you can communicate clearly about systems, all right, then you could say that your system's literate. And I would like to think that we as a community could take the work, the foundational work of the ocean, right, a pretty important dam system, the earth science, And then we've gone on and done atmospheric science, and we've done climate literacy, and take those fundamental, that is it, isn't it? Right? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about sustainability. Go from there, and so that's, in a way, is grounded in those real systems and move it into that. So I know that's a long way of answering it, but I don't want to think about systems thinking only. This is systems literacy, which is a sense of empowerment almost, perhaps. So another good microphone. Sorry, yes.
Peter, may I suggest that we also include questions for Gunther?
Of course,
so questions for
course.
Either of the morning speakers in the next
absolutely.
10 minutes before a break.
Absolutely.
So we have plenty of time.
Absolutely.
So.
Of course.
In regard to what you just said, is thinking simply about it, is systems literacy not just an outcome of systems thinking education in all different forms?
Of course.
Formal, informal,
Absolutely.
etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed. I think it's on. Yeah.
Hello. There were two very insightful talks by Peter
Gunther, Peter.
and you.
Thank you.
And you talked about business, changing the business model. You gave many examples. Business affects all of us. So that is really a very promising idea. We need to continue to build on what you have already started. The second is literacy, systems literacy. You touched upon that using ocean as a example, as a model. Let's build on it. So my thought is that why don't we create a system in this conference to promote both?
Indeed. Of course. Wonderful. That's what I was hoping would be a little bit of an emergent property from this meeting this morning, that we would get really challenged to think about business. Gunther, you go.
Oh, hello. My name is Louis Klein from Berlin, Systemic Excellence Group and European School of Governance. And just as a recommendation or an invitation to the plenary, if you pose questions, please introduce yourself so that those who are new to us as a systems community, and especially the speakers, have an idea who they're actually talking to, who's posing the question. My question goes to Gunther Parley. Very inspiring, the blue economy and all the pilots that you run all over the world, and certainly they're outgrown the stage where you can call them pilots. My question is more a philosophical one, pointing at Theodore W. Adorno, who said there's no right life and the wrong one. And that looks at the context of economics. The question, and that's a bit of a challenge, challenging your position here, to what extent can all these good examples be restricted by the overall economic context to being just that, nice little pockets where things work and with no ability to scale? So what's the outlook of the blue economy to economics in contrast to business?
Oh, yeah. Let's take this. Oh, you got another one. Okay.
20 years ago, we were running projects of a size of $10,000 to $20,000. Today, we have projects of the size of $25 billion. Let me humbly submit to you that $25 billion in a $1 trillion economy is insignificant. But we're hitting the base. And the base is the farmer, the shepherd, the miner. We're hitting the base from where all economy starts and ends, including the fishermen. We have numerous projects on the ocean and the fishermen, but for sake of time, I couldn't go into detail about. So to me, what we often forget is that macroeconomics is the amalgamation of the microeconomics. And we have given excessive power to the people managing the hula hoop around the macroeconomics, like central banks and reserve banks and companies that are too big to fail and too big to go to jail. You know, so as long as we are in that thinking that we believe that the macroeconomics will be deciding our lives, we need to top it upside down. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is to really start on the basis of, for example, we have a large project today in Brittany, which is 60% of the fresh fish supply for France, and it is dead in a decade. So how do we recover Brittany from the farmer, from the fisherman up? And I think this is where we have a very big difference. I have been close to ISSS from the times that the Russians were still chairing ISSS, the Soviet Union. And ISSS has been a great inspiration, but it remains too macro. We need to change the business model so that we, from bottom up, we can change it around. It's the only way we're going to change it. We can never expect a president or a head of a reserve bank to make any difference in our life. They will never. And so this is really then, I come back to the education. It's the empowering of K through 12.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the only place where I'm really spending my time. Yeah. You're an exception. You're over K-12, right? So we need to focus on how do we get, and it's amazing that the only educational system endorsed by government that has given me direct access to all their teachers, is China. The only one. No other government around the world, certainly not my own Belgian government, is giving me access to teachers. The second government that has done it is Brazil. The Brazilian government is ready to do that. Anyone from Brazil here? In Rio Grande do Sul and in Curitiba. We started in Curitiba. When our dear friend Cássio Taniguchi foi prefeito, quando o prefeito Taniguchi, ficamos fazer uma coisa juntos. I mean, 6,000 teachers, 120,000 kids in 3 years' time, introducing. So I think we as an organization, we don't worry about our number related to impact, because if we do that, we make Excel spreadsheets and we're insignificant. We think that we have to go from these thousands. I mean, 3,000 mushroom farms on coffee is little, but I'm convinced we'll hit the 1 million mark in a decade or two. We'll hit it, and we will have transformed coffee business forever. Coffee business transformation is not Starbucks. It is what we do with the 99.8% that Starbucks does not give value to. And these are but this is entrepreneurship. This is starting on the bottom. So I think, well, the real impact will be there when I'm not here anymore. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Hello. Sorry. My name is Josephine. I have another question for Gunther. I work for an independent research organization called ISSS, and I was working for the Club of Rome for 5 years before that. And I have a question regarding deep systems change, regarding your model. I'm very impressed as well by all the possibilities out there. And these showcases of what we can do and to empower people to actually do something. But the only thing is that it's nice to have these examples, but for deep systems change, we know if we want to change paradigms and to address root causes. I mean, the root causes right now is democratic system or governance systems where short-termism is prevailing, economic system which is not delivering what it should, putting human and the environment in the center, and as well belief system and value systems which are not aligned what we really need. The thing is, when you're talking about business plans and growth, isn't it reinforcing already the economic system we already have, which is not working? It's a neoclassical system. And aren't you scared that by using the same terms, the same approaches, that you're reinforcing a system that actually needs to be changed?
So
and we all know that when we reinforce...
So the question is it reinforcing?
Exactly, and when we reinforce...
We're going to run out of time for him to answer. Let's let him answer the question.
First of all, we do not use business plans. If you have the impression that we use it, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong impression. 0 business plans in our model. 0. Second, we only do projects in the periphery where there is crisis. We don't do it in the center. I'm not going to Washington, D.C. and waste my time. I'm going to Durango in Colorado, where we can change things. We need to go to the periphery to change. Third, from system theory, I learned the concept of autopoiesis. Autopoiesis allows me to create disturbances. I need to create disturbances. And I'm a disturber. I am not here to be popular and to be liked like a panda. I want to disturb. I want people to feel uncomfortable and dislike. Because the only way we get the paradigm shift is that there are disturbances continuously on all corners, all the time. But that disturbance is based on systems modeling. And I forgot to mention to you, our key partner in the systems modeling for the past 3 years has been die Universität der Deutschen Bundeswehr, the University of the German Army. Because they have a system dynamics team that is extraordinary, headed by Professor Stefan Pickel. And so we're using people who were at the Santa Fe Institute, who were transferred to the University of the Bundeswehr. And then we're tapping in the incredible Slovenian, Croatian, and Slovakian mathematicians that are jobless today in that part of the world. And they're helping us to do our mathematical model. I mean, a stone paper factory is 3,000 equations, huh? That's 3,000 equations to do a stone paper factory. But then we're able to say exactly in every detail, and we're out in Shenyang, 60 kilometers from the border of North Korea. We know exactly the impacts that we can generate if we start running the models. But never with a business model. Never a business plan. Sorry.
We'll take a little bit of time for one last short question, because it's technically time for a break. But this is Paul Sperry.
Okay, yeah, Paul Sperry, as Alec Tsoukalos and I prepare for the policy summit on Wednesday, one question that comes up is, as you look at a world changing an energy source, the question's for either one of you, you need to find a way to help enable those that are being displaced. Do you have any ideas about what to do with coal miners, and that level of energy that can help them find avenues that allow them to continue to produce while moving to cleaner energy systems?
I'm going to be very direct. Coal is not the problem. The problem is the way the business model around coal. Coal is an incredible resource. The emissions of coal is not a problem. We actually have the first project in Rio Grande do Sul with Electrobras. They have 5 coal-fired power stations, and we're producing spirulina from the exhaust of the coal. We should start thinking differently. Don't accuse coal of emitting something. Accuse people of not knowing that you can use the emissions for doing spirulina. We can do the largest spirulina farms in the world thanks to coal mine and coal burning. But we're not doing it. Why? Because they're all in their core business model. I'm in the mining business. I'm in the coal business. I'm in the energy business. I'm certainly not in the spirulina business. And that is where we're failing. And a child doesn't understand it. We have in Brazil, in the time of the President Lula, we had a program for 34 million children receiving spirulina for free. Thanks to whom? Carbon emissions. Hey, why do we want to certificate them and trade them? Why don't you turn them into a business and good things? Because in nature, there is not the good and bad. There's only the better. That's what evolution is.
If I can quickly add then, education, obviously, and earth scientists. I mean, you're talking about an earth property, learning about it, and then obviously new kinds of business and entrepreneurial activity in those areas. And I think we have to be very careful about this continuing consolidation at cities and coastlines when interior parts of the country are falling down in that sense. That's a whole other issue which we should discuss at some point. But
Okay, it's time for our break. Let's thank both of our